A 99% of dinosaur knowledge overlooks this single, crucial bone structure. But this fundamental division separates nearly all known dinosaur species. But we categorize them into two major orders, Saurischia and Ornithischia. Saurischia, the lizard-hipped group, maintained a primitive pelvic arrangement. The pubis pointed forward, beneath the ilium and ischium bones. This structure supported the two most famous lineages of dinosaurs. This included the massive, long-necked sauropods, the Earth's largest land animals. And critically, it included the fearsome theropods, like the apex predators. Their three-toed gait, built for speed and power, originated here. And now that we understand the lizard hips, let's explore the evolutionary surprise. Indeed, the direct descendants of Saurischians are flying birds today. Contrast this with the Ornithischians, the bird-hipped dinosaurs. Their hip evolved differently, with the pubis pointing backward parallel to the ischium. But this configuration created a more stable base, supporting massive herbivorous forms. This group includes all the armored, horned, and duck-billed dinosaurs. Their dental structures evolved specifically for high-volume, abrasive plant processing. They were the primary bulk grazers and browsers of the Mesozoic era. The horns and frills were elaborate structures, perhaps for display or defense. Here lies the great paradox: the bird-hipped lineage did not lead to birds. Evolutionary convergence gave both groups a similar, functional bird-like hip stance. Understanding this hip structure is key to tracing the evolutionary tree. But even among the smaller dinosaurs, this hip distinction holds true. The muscle attachment points dictated locomotive mechanics and posture. Saurischian hips allowed for greater rotational freedom in their gait. Ornithischian hips favored sheer vertical loading and stability over speed. This split occurred very early in the Archosaur lineage's diversification. Even bipedal Ornithischians utilized this specialized, backwards-pointing pubis. The differences extended beyond the main pelvic girdle, influencing breathing. Saurischians may have utilized a more avian-like, unidirectional airflow system. The Ornithischians likely employed a more conventional, tidal flow respiration system. This anatomical difference ultimately shaped their ecological roles for millennia. Saurischian theropods retained ancestral carnivorous adaptations with evolutionary flexibility. Their hip structure supported the dynamic movements necessary for predation. But this bipedal stance, rooted in the Saurischian hip, was highly successful. But conversely, Ornithischian defense systems prioritized passive protection and bulk. Mate, reliance on massive herbivory locked them into the quadrupedal framework. The backward-pointing pubis shifted the center of gravity lower and rearward. and these structural differences dictated everything from diet to social behavior. And now that we understand the structure, let's examine the fate of these groups. The Saurischian line, despite its diversity, ultimately produced avian life. But lightening the frame through hollow bones was key to successful flight evolution. This pathway, enabled by their original hip, conquered the skies. But the Ornithischians, however, remained firmly rooted to the terrestrial environment. But their evolutionary investment was in armor bulk and sophisticated grazing mechanisms. Their tails often served as heavy counterbalances or defensive clubs. When the global crisis struck, these differing body plans dictated survival odds. The massive, slow-metabolizing Ornithischians struggled to find sufficient resources. Smaller, generalist Saurischians, especially the ancestors of birds, adapted more readily. One lineage continued the legacy, the other reached its specialized conclusion. The hip is more than just supported, it is a blueprint for destiny. The Ornithischian reversal limited their subsequent anatomical redesign potential. The Saurischian forward-pointing pubis allowed for radical shifts in posture. This structural difference set the stage for bipedal dominance across ages. The Ornithischians perfected their niche as armored titans of the landscape. And every subsequent specialization, teeth armor neck, was influenced by the hip socket. But the subtle shift in a single bone initiated the path to flight itself. The Ornithischia still represents an astonishing diversity within its own constraints. We see the living legacy of the Saurischian hip in every feather today. The history of life is often written in the subtle architecture of bone. Understanding Saurischia and Ornithischia reveals the power of anatomical divergence.